So, evolutionary hijacking. It goes on all over the place, wherever you care to look, really. There has been a lot of time and energy, money invested in studying what makes people tick, right? And you can see this with all the ad agencies, right? Marketing in itself is just how to manipulate people, how to get attention, right? And because that's a huge thing, right? TV, commercials, YouTube, social media, all that stuff is just vying for your attention, which equates to getting your money, which is just your time, really, because the majority of people sell their soul for an hourly wage, right? Like your salary is what they pay you to forget your dreams in a large way. But like understanding your own inclinations as a human, right? Understanding what you are geared towards, right? Like obviously sex sells because reproduction is really important for the furthering of your species. So it is an attention grabber, right? Fear sells, right? Because it is beneficial to have the fear, like in a survival sense. Okay, if you don't have fear, you'll do stupid things, right? So it makes sense that, oh man, you hear a noise, you hear this, you hear that. It makes sense to run in fear, right? The people that are like, all right, let's go confront this, and they just face up against anything that they're not afraid of. They usually don't live too long, right? And then, of course, there's social proof, right? Where you see other people doing something, and so you think, all right, well, yeah, that's the way it goes. We're social creatures. That's how you learn, right? You watch your parents, you watch your siblings, you watch other people around you, and that's how you interact with the world based off of their reaction to it, right? And 9 times out of 10, it works out pretty good, right? If everybody's going towards the exit, chances are there's something going on and you need to get out, right? But we haven't evolved to look past a screen. Like, we are not geared toward all of this, right? We still have the minds of hunter gatherers, and it might be shrinking even still with the repetition of our work and just our disconnect from our environment, right? Because the early hunter gatherers were constantly paying attention. They were the ultimate opportunists, right? And you had to be alert and able in order to survive, right? In order to contribute to the tribe, right? Because getting kicked out of the tribe almost meant certain death. And that is part of the reason that we feel so much pain when we're ostracized, right? Even a child understands being left out of something, right? It is one of the earliest things. You want to fit in. And so when you see other people that are like you or that you aspire to be, right? They always have happy people in commercials. Oh, yeah, this and that. Yeah. Don't you want to be like me? Right? They got the old person taking arthritis medication, playing with their grandkids again. And, they really try to pull on that emotional heartstring, right? Because if you get somebody to start making decisions emotionally instead of logically, well, then you can basically do whatever you want because people are pursuing the gratification of emotion over logically following the concept through to conclusion. And this is the way that the majority of decisions are made because most people think that they are their thinking selves and that they are this like more conscious than they are, right? Because there is all sorts of like subliminal things within your subconscious, yeah, but there's also all sorts of physical stimulants, right? Because when you see something, it affects you on a chemical level, right? If you see an attractive woman, there is a chemical reaction. It's more than just a mental process, right? You don't just think, oh, this woman's attractive. Yes, I would like to mate with her. No, you have a whole cocktail of chemicals that is released, giving you all sorts of emotions and stimulations, and your eyes will dilate and widen, and your breath might change, and, all that fun. All right, as well as different color associations. So, like bright colors would be indicative of fruit or something venomous, right? So they try and capture whatever colors grab the attention the most. They put it at whatever level you see it at, right? And then they want to have people like you in order to present the fact that you want to be a member of this club, right? And then you get the species so emotional that they're not able to logically think through what you're telling them. They just know that you make them feel good or you make them angry, right? It's either a love hate instead of a, all right, let's break this down. So, no, it's about how I feel. And you constantly have this being reinforced with all sorts of phrases and stuff like, yeah, go with your gut and just trust your heart and all this fun, right? But logical decisions stand the test of time, right? If it doesn't, then it wasn't true logic, right? Emotions change moment by moment. One of the greatest factors in whether or not a parolee will get parole is when was the last time the judge ate, right? Okay, so like right before lunch, most people do not get paroled because it's a lot faster to just deny it, right? You're thinking about food. You want to go to lunch. Right after lunch, you're way more likely to get paroled. Why do you think that the politicians always have get togethers with large food? And after the food is when they ask for money, right? Not before. Okay. Now, there are all sorts of chemical hijacking, right? Through the food that we eat, it's all synthesized, right? It's not real sugar. But like mammals crave sugar and fat because we're designed to put on weight for winter, right? That is what we want. That's what gets us going, right? Because in nature, the two things that bring you the most pleasure, right? Just as an action, is food and sex, right? So both can be addictive because you get addicted to the pleasure that you derive from it, right? And both can be distorted with an abundance, right? So we can eat sweet, fatty foods all the time. This is something that would be relatively rare for our ancestors, right? You don't have incredibly concentrated sugar extract or genetically modified high fructose corn syrup, right? You'd have to find a fruit, eat the fruit, and get some natural sugar from it. There's a big difference between a banana and thousands of years of corn that are all genetically modified, stripped down into the basic component, and made into a synthesized sweetener, right? And then we wonder why we have diabetes and all this other fun. Not to mention, like grains, you can't eat grains in its natural form. Like it has to be ground down, it has to be cooked, it has to be mixed up. So, like, it's a powder and it returns to a powder within you. Yeah? And then you take artificial sweeteners. Your tongue, like, the whole reason that you taste is so that way your digestive system is prepared for what you're ingesting. So if you eat something sweet, it knows to release this amount of acid, this, and that, right? It prepares for it. That's why you smell delicious food, you salivate, right? It's good to smell your food before you eat it, right? It prepares you. It's also good not to drink water right before you eat, right after you eat. It throws off the alkalinity and all that fun. So, like, that is immensely hijacked. All right, and now drugs. Drugs are synthesized happiness, right? It is pleasure in a chemical cocktail, okay? And that's even drugs that are not physically addictive, like cocaine, right? The receptors in your brain that fire up when you think about eating a cake or a pie or something delicious and sweet, right? Are the same receptors that fire up when someone who is addicted to coke thinks about doing a line or smoking a rock or any of that. It is the exact same thing to your brain. Now, physical addiction, that's a whole nother thing, right? So your opioids, especially the opioids. Man, people are dropping like flies from fentanyl, like 70,000 some people. It's gotten so bad. Everybody knows somebody who's died from that, right? But this is a numbing agent. It takes away pain. It takes away a physical pain, but it also takes away emotional pain, right? And a lot of people are very damaged. They're very traumatized. And so this is a warm embrace of a chemical cocktail of numbness, right? And then you have the physical addiction. So it's not only the joy that it brings when you are taking it, but it's the excruciating misery when it is taken away from you. So it adds a whole nother component to that addiction. And it is an overwhelming pandemic that has been started primarily through the pharmaceutical companies releasing opioids as pain relievers and prescribing them quite liberally and having that set up as their incentive basis. Right. You know the occupation of Afghanistan, they provided 5% of the world's opium before we invaded, and then went all the way up to like 95% of the world's opium production. So there's definitely some sketchy stuff involved there, right? It's a sad thing. It's truly upsetting how many people are being taken advantage of in ways that they do not consciously have any clue about, right? So try and understand what your own inclinations are, right? Try and figure out the areas where you are incredibly susceptible. Do you get emotional really easy, and then from there you're easily manipulated? Do you have chemical dependence or an addictive nature, right? And we're addicted to all sorts of things, right? Caffeine, nicotine, sugar, right? Not to mention all the array of pharmaceuticals, uppers, downers, relaxers, killers, and all that fun. Right? Some people are taking SSRIs that literally rewrite the way that your brain flows. And the vast majority of people who have issues with addiction have an early trauma in life just to they have that void that needs to be filled, right? And when you're addicted to something, you care about that thing instead of whatever else, right? So like even if it's something small like a cigarette addiction, that's something that's always weighing on the back of your brain, right? 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half go by. Yeah, I want that cigarette. Now that occupies the front, right? The forefront of your mind is fixated with that addiction, right? You wake up in the morning and you want a cup of coffee and it's like, "Oh, I haven't had my coffee yet. I need my coffee." All right. So like you can kind of subsidize your life with little addictions, right? You can live vicariously through television or video games, and that could occupy the majority of your time if you so choose, or even just occupying all of your free time, right? We live in a world of addiction, and it is something that we need to try and gain control of in our own personal lives. And we need to not allow major corporations and governments to take full advantage whenever they please. And that is currently what is going on. Yeah, I didn't even get into the phone addiction. Ridiculousness. But I believe we're all victims to it, and we're not necessarily prepared for this amount of technology. But that's probably a conversation for another time. I wish you all the best of luck. We have more in common with each other than those that want us to fight. All right.